The Fossores Chapter House is the world's first headquarters for Christian ministerial innovation, bringing preachers, leaders, and innovators together to collaborate on new liturgies, resources, and responses to the challenge of our times. This podcast explores the ever-changing era of perpetual upheaval, in which effective ministry requires constant imagination, creativity, and change. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on the Chapter House podcast. I'm here with my good friend Juan Cordova. Long time we've been friends.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
2006 or so.
Yeah.
5.
Yeah. Jay started out as a student of mine when I was teaching undergraduate classes.
Worst student ever.
the student that drank the most Red Bull.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the sleep deprived UPS. Were you UPS or was that where you were working?
Yeah, the short shorts.
Did
The
you
short
wear short
shorts,
little
yeah.
brown shorts?
Yeah, there were times that I had to deliver to Westwinds.
That's fantastic.
and then go on a Thursday night to class.
Oh man, and I thought we might. Jay's a media expert, media guru, an entrepreneur, and I just thought we might start by talking about what sucks about Zoom, and what the limitations are of live streaming, and from there we'll why out and talk about other media stuff. And Jay's got some stuff he wants to share, but man, Zoom fatigue is real, and I think already, a year into the pandemic, we're all realizing there are limits to what you can do with Zoom and with live stream, and there are certainly limits to what you can enjoy with Zoom and live stream. So, what do you think are the biggest mistakes people make when they try and use Zoom for their church, for their business?
Yeah, why don't we break it down from the relational mistake? Let's talk first relational mistakes, then let's talk some of the technical mistakes that people make in Zoom or Teams or WebEx or whatever platform you end up choosing. They're all nearly identical. Relationally, the biggest issues that I see that I've found after not only using Zoom avidly before COVID, but post-COVID situations, I find that the main issue that people have is that the content is so one-sided. It still feels like you're screaming through a screen, and there's very little engagement on the other side. And there are some people that are using the breakout groups appropriately. They're finding polling navigation systems. There's add-ons that are coming out almost weekly for they're called Zaps, Zoom apps that are integrating with that relational and
Zoom's done a good job with their platform, but it's just whether or not we know how to use it.
Yeah, and whether or not you're willing to see kind of outside of the rectangular box that you're using, whether it's your phone Zoom or your. So for the folks on the other side that are just finding Zoom fatigue, I would say establish a ground set of rules for how you're engaging on that platform in every meeting, and then turn your video off sometimes. Just there's a lot of funkiness and research now coming out on just staring and watching people, and how depressing and unengaging that actually is. Like,
well, I think video is great, provided that you're an active and engaged listener. I mean, I'm on Zoom, 6 hours a day, minimally, and there's great Zoom participants, and then there's everybody other than those three.
Yeah.
and when you're looking away from the camera, when you're doing something else, when you're eating a bowl of cereal, even if you're muted, all of that stuff sucks. If you're presenting or if you're asking for feedback and it's supposed to be some kind of dialogue, the optics are so bad. And if you're presenting and the camera is down here, so you're getting old man fat neck, or you're getting the weird sort of glowering Marvel supervillain thing. I mean, just have a clue and think about how that looks for somebody else.
Not to mention that audio is the most key important piece of the whole deal. If you have a crappy echo room, if you have a sound chamber vacuum, then that. And then of course, with your kiddos at home, if you have any kind of small children, they're going to make a little peek appearance, and if they're clothed fully or not, it's not like you can stop your presentation to get to it. I can't tell you how many times.
My favorite one was
little blonde baby
the
showed
BBC
up.
anchor.
Yeah, that's right.
The kid runs in the back door, and the poor wife is dragging the kid out screaming while he's trying to finish his interview.
That's just so real about
that.
And I think that as we're all trying to figure out what all of life and work and even family gatherings through Zoom look like. The biggest thing I can say is just have a little grace extend as much grace as you possibly can with your coworkers, your friends, the colleagues.
But you said you wanted to start relationally, so grace is huge. And think too, like Zoom isn't like listening to a TED Talk. But if you're going to Zoom with somebody, you're really the whole idea, the intent is that you're engaged with them.
Yeah.
So it's not even like a phone call where you can put it on speakerphone and kind of go about and do your own thing and only periodically tag in. I mean, Zoom is the fastest way to show someone else you don't care about them in the new world. And also conversely, when you put in a modicum of effort to engage either a presenter or a dialogue partner, that makes a huge difference. Like people are so grateful. I mean, if I've got to give a lecture on Zoom and I've got one person who's making eye contact, who's nodding, who's putting comments in the chat, I mean, that person's my new best friend.
Yeah. So what I as a rule of thumb, I don't do things on a Zoom call that I wouldn't do in front of you. So if we're having conversation and
you do a lot in front of me.
But still, I mean, I might be like, hey, just for a moment, I'm just to text my buddy. But
yeah, right.
But
right.
You wouldn't have an entire text thread. You wouldn't mute that Zoom call and pick up the phone call and do something else. You wouldn't just start doing email in the middle of it all. So just consider that the socially distancing situation may be temporary or an extended temporary, but the relational component of whatever's on the other side is pretty permanent.
Yeah.
And
right. I may only Zoom with you 3 more times, but I have to live with you forever. Yeah,
exactly.
It's funny because it's changed the technology. Not the technology. Our engagement with the technology has changed so much since COVID. I mean, I was still on Zoom at least an hour a day pre-COVID, whether it was with academic work or whether it was with colleagues or brainstorming or whatever. I go, but now it's just because it's the only thing that we do with most people, it feels like the stakes are higher. It feels like we engage differently. It feels like we think about it differently.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you need to do, right? The thinking intentionally about what's going to happen, what's the experience, and whether a Zoom call is the best thing we should do right now, or it should be a phone call, or I should just send you a little video snippet of what I'm thinking through or talking through.
Yeah, or a text message or whatever.
Text message. Surprisingly, PowerPoint presentations and Prezis have increased dramatically the use of that, and everybody hates that, right? Yeah. Everybody hates, like, I don't want to.
I feel like I'm watching Blue's Clues. Somebody puts a Prezi up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dora the Explorer is about to walk onto my Zoom call.
And I've never seen one that actually works.
Yeah.
Like I've always
remember, oh my gosh.
Because they're all templated.
Yeah, 100 years ago, Jay and I were trying to come up with new ways to do media during church services. And so we used to run, instead of PowerPoint as an accompaniment to the sermons, we used to run flash presentations. We basically built a website for each sermon and then show the website on the screen. We also ran experiments where we were showing, you were my dancing partner multiple times, which is a technique that we learned from Len Sweet, where Jay would just be in the booth and he would be Google image searching keywords and phrases. Remember, and we did that one thing where we had like 6 screens on stage and we had 6 different operators, each on a different laptop. Some people looking for images, some people looking for like Greek and Hebrew words, some people looking
at GIFs.
Or
GIFs.
Right, whatever you call them, the goofy little animations. And so, just as I think about the ways that we are engaging screens now and the ways that you and I in particular have been engaging screens for the last, decade and a half, it's amazing how much we have to draw on, and it's amazing how much we have to learn.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating and cutting edge experiments that we did was the Twitter church concept. Yeah, right? And I would say, what was it, 2006, 7, something ago, like that.
When the Time magazine article came out.
But the whole deal was, auto refresh had just come out. The script for auto refresh on Mozilla. Mozilla was the only browser that did it.
Yeah, that's
right. And we had to write the auto refresh components so often, so it wouldn't just be like a seizing mess for people that were watching it, and there would be tweets, but we had like strategically placed people to like, if there's no engagement, I need you to say this.
Yeah, right.
And there were people even in the audience,
David Buchanan taught us that you got to pre-populate your content. If you do some kind of experiment with social media and you don't have 50 people who are already on your side, who are already committed to be meaningfully engaged, it's going to flop.
Well,
we learned that with Twitter, we learned Instagram, Facebook. We learned that when we do book sales. I mean, if you don't already have a ground team, I wonder if that might be something worthwhile considering about going into Zoom meetings. Is if you're going to do a Zoom Bible study with maybe 10 or 20 people, is to text 2 or 3 of them in advance and say, hey, I need you to be my champion here.
Tell them exactly what. Very specific. These are the things that I need you to engage with. These are the questions.
Eye contact, comments in the chat. I need you to lead a breakout group.
Yeah. Private message the goofballs that are not engaged.
Oh, I kick them out. Multiple times I've kicked people out where I just go, because if you're the host in Zoom, you can just put somebody in the waiting room, and then I don't ever even make a big deal. I don't even address it. If somebody's being a dick, I just kick them out, and then because I don't want to sit there and try and compete with somebody for their attention.
No.
And yeah, I mean, I realize that sounds a little harsh, but honestly, I just don't want to do it. I'm like, if you're gonna make jokes, make them for me to enjoy. Also, don't make them. And I had one kid at one of the seminaries where I teach. We're in a Zoom class, and he thought he was private messaging someone else, and he goes, "Man, this guy's a douche. I can't stand him." But it was to the whole public chat.
Everybody.
So I just called him out. I was like, "Hey, Dillweed, whatever his name was." I said, "What makes you think I'm a douche? Like, what is the thing here that's difficult for you?" And of course, he looks like he's been shot in the chest. And I said, "Okay, well, later, if you got something you want to say and you want to tell me, let me know." Goof.
Nobody expected that they'd turn into a televangelist if they were in the church space before 2020, right? Like knocking, but now you have to figure it out. And those that were on a running start, they were at least going 15 miles an hour before 2020, and that experimented and failed.
It's amazing to me that all these guys who have long-standing successful TV ministries, long-standing successful broadcast ministries, and long-standing successful internet followings have really not risen up at all. I mean, Stephen Furtick and Elevation Church is almost the only church that comes across my feed. I see almost nothing from Hillsongs, and I'm a fan. Almost nothing from Bethel, and I'm a fan. I see almost nothing from TD Jakes, and I'm a fan. And I mean, I suppose maybe saying it on the podcast and saying it in front of my laptop, my iPad, and my phone. I hope maybe Facebook is eavesdropping on me and start to send me something in addition to Stephen Furtick. Yeah. But it's crazy that those guys haven't leveled up in the way that Elevation Church has. It's crazy to me that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the people who have are the porn sites. they're always the people who capture the innovators in that. Anyone in like digital imagery, anything in conversion, anything in like high viewership, those folks, the OnlyFans of the world. Those are the people that have, unfortunately, figured out how to get in front of the video consuming world. And if you look at Facebook, if you look at Twitter, if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at all the top 10 social media sites, TikTok, they're all video consumers. A decade ago, I ran a media business called Jacksonopolis here in Jackson. And we used to say this all the time. If a picture's worth 1,000 words and you have a video, then you're showing 24 frames per second.
24 pictures every second.
24 pictures every second, and you make a 30-second video, you have that much more opportunity to capture somebody's attention. And most people think that the longer the video is, the more captive I have people. But statistically, people tap out at about 68 seconds is like the peak of video, and most videos are tapped out within 15 seconds. Because that's
so. Why is like when you upload a video to Facebook? Because I'm doing an art project for Lent right now, and I'm uploading these little 60-second videos to Facebook. I picked 60 seconds so I could also put it on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But Facebook right away says a lot more people will see this if it's longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah, because Facebook has they're liars. They're liars. Facebook has a
nobody see it. I mean, if I make a 5-minute preaching video, a lot more people see that than a 60-second art video.
Yeah, and that's because Facebook wants that network specifically has set up their algorithm so that they elevate those videos that are a little longer because they want to keep people on their platform. The idea of some of these other platforms, you have to understand the media mechanic behind it.
Yeah.
Instagram wants you to keep scrolling and flipping and scrolling on. That's how they keep you engaged in their network. Facebook has watch parties. If you create watch parties, Facebook will give you infinitely more opportunity to get in front of people and tagging those individually, so that the Facebook has a master memory that retains how you interact with your content and how people like to interact with your content, and then they'll elevate you in their search engine optimization based off of how successful you've been with those people. So if you have watch parties, if you have cell groups that are focused on doing this, you can kind of hack the system by navigating up in their algorithms, and then Facebook rewards you for your viewership and for your engagement. And the more people actually engage in the deal, more elevation comes through into their degrees of separation, all the way up to 6 degrees of separation. And LinkedIn does this even better. LinkedIn doesn't have watch parties, but they bring your degrees up all the way to 7. So if ever you've been on LinkedIn and you're like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not even friends with this person. Why am I seeing this piece of my feed? On the very top it says Jay Cordova likes this video or whatever. So Facebook or LinkedIn has figured out that the things that you and I care about, because we have enough contacts and friends together, because we have maybe enough similarities in our profiles, that if Jay likes this, maybe Dave's going to like this, even though Dave has zero connection with this particular individual, and that reach becomes infinitely bigger, right? So those two platforms, they're what they are is content saturated platforms. And what they do is, because you're content saturated, means they can't give you all of your connections. So they realize, or they look for the connections that you deem valuable, and then they try to bust those up. The more you can engage with, liking or disliking or all that, it'll start tuning the kinds of things that you find valuable. And I would say the hack to that is call your 10, 15, 20, 30 friends up and say, hey, I need you to like this and engage with it or share it. So make me a commitment to either comment, good, better, best, right? Good, like it. Better, like it and comment. Best, like it, comment, and share it. And use these tags so that my reach goes out to those places. If you're able to do that with most posts at about 10 to 15 people, you increase by 1,000% your likelihood of reach. It's the organic when we're trying earned to sell, media.
when we're trying to sell books, I usually have a ground team of, if I really want the book to sell well, I'll have a ground team of 50 people, and I'll ask them to do that. I'll ask them to write endorsements. I'll ask them to tag it. I'll ask them to share it on their networks, to share the link. I'll ask them to pre-order the book or buy the book. And the difference between doing all of that, which call that 50 hours worth of work, and the difference between that and doing nothing, is the difference between selling 10,000 copies and selling like 25 copies. I mean, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. They just those social media networks reward the viewership and engagement from those groups, which is why the rise of influencers has been so successful in certain pockets.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like my cousin Karen is a fantastic designer. She's worked on Coca-Cola in Mexico. She's worked on Pepsi in Mexico, Nike. She's currently doing a Adobe iPad. She's one of like the beta testers for the Adobe iPad applications on the deal, and she just navigates this pocket.
With Melissa right now, right?
Yeah, she pockets. She does all these pockets of things, and then just has an interesting followership. And the thing that she said repeatedly to get over 100,000 followers is you just have to do consistent content, almost predictably at the time of the day, and that starts building up. So there's been a lot of studies out there on how to get seen on those content saturated platforms, and the one consistent thing is resharing and engagements on the two consistent. So resharing and engagements from small pockets of people, even if it's 25 people, it starts breaking up that those algorithms into other spheres of influence, right?
Well, as a for instance, if I want to grow the Chapter House Instagram page, what should I be doing differently than what I'm doing now? Because I post every day at about 8 o'clock in the morning. There's usually pictures of the house, because that's what people seem to like. And then, but I might only get 30 or 50 likes per post.
Yeah.
I think I have 1,200 or 1,300 followers, something like that. So,
Yeah.
And I use probably a dozen hashtags. A lot of those are just trying to build the brand because Fossores is a weird word and Chapter House is a peculiar brand. So I was using those. But I get very little engagement with people. But people always talk to me about the Instagram, which is hilarious. They'll go, "Oh man, I love the pictures that you post, or I love what you write." But I don't get many likes or shares. So
yeah, there's interesting thing about those self-publishing platforms is that unless you have engagement from a specific set of people, then you're still not going to be rewarded for that. So the only piece of difference that I would say in there is make just like you get with the books, a pre-publishing deal. I would increase that by about 100 people and select them like it's a job and say, listen, I need you to make this commitment to me, and if you can't, no problem. I love you anyway, and let's do this. But once a week, I want you to pick the day, and I want you at 9:00 in the morning get on and reshare and say these things and use these hashtags. But I would pick about 100 to 150 people that would commit to doing that. And if you do that for 30 days, you would
blow up.
You would blow up by 1,000% in your right? If you can get 100 people, you'll blow up by 1,000% because the way that those content saturated networks reward viewership is by giving you more audience. They'll put you into the main feeds. They'll put you in the main feeds.
Don't see them. Yeah.
Yep, they'll put you in their main like IGTV feeds and those other ones. But that's what it takes. It takes about 100 people that are engaging on a regular basis on those things to get to the next 1,000 people that are doing that. And
that's helpful.
Move on that. But it's a serious commitment and it's a
sure. You're really cashing in favors. Right?
You're really cashing in favors.
If you're listening to the podcast and you're like, how will I get Dave to like me more? This is it. This is it right now. Send me a message and say I'm going to be on your ground team, and I'll go. Fantastic. Do you want a hug now, or do you want a hug for the rest of your life? Because you can have both.
Yeah. I mean, it's something very impactful. It's non-monetary. It would take no effort other than the focus time on that.
Sure. Take you 2 minutes a day to
if that,
forward something.
30 seconds a day. I'd put it into the disciplines to do it. And then what I would say is every single person that ever says, "Hey Dave, I love that." I'm like, "Oh, great. You can show me you love that by doing these things." Do
you love it 30 seconds worth?
The other yes, exactly. So the other thing
really changes the love me a long time sort of.
I am a QR junkie, and so many things have
I don't know what QR is. Like you talking
QR codes? Yeah, the little QR codes that restaurants have made accessible. So this is the deal.
QR codes. J-Bo made that book with all the cool QR codes in it, or the King Me book about the Psalms.
I talked to him. He was extremely innovative in his time for
absolutely
that. So this is the deal about QR codes. They were created by Toyota Factory, right?
Okay.
And they needed something that carried more data, scripted data than a barcode.
Okay.
Because the manufacturing pieces had to be scanned on belts and had to do. I mean, what you know now of UPS, right? When I worked at UPS 15 years ago, there were 3 or 4 different types of QR codes that you had to scan all in a row before you moved, and we were moving about 53 feet of freight an hour. One individual went in, and you just chucked boxes out 53 feet, right? So one long trailer in an hour. You had to do that. So the readers had to scan fast, and the hands had to click in it, and so QR codes were created by manufacturers to be able to carry a lot of data and scripted data. So nobody figured that out for another 15 or 20 years before like restaurants in 2020 were like, wait a minute, we can't have contact, and nobody wants to type out our stinking address. Right. So like, how do we make this fast? So a few restaurants did it, and then it blew up. But this is the thing about QR codes. You can set QR codes in various places to tag various things. So if you made a QR code and it had a prescripted deal with resharing your post or resharing your profile or doing those kind of things, then it would take no effort for somebody to just scan it and let it follow its script and then kickstart that whole deal.
So give me a for instance, like you talk and I go, oh, if I put QR codes around the house, then I could explain everything about Intarsia. But you're talking like if I put a QR code on Instagram?
You could put it on Instagram. I use my Zoom profile picture is my is my QR code to LinkedIn, because I'm growing my LinkedIn network. I'm at 5,000 followers in that space, right?
Yeah.
So my LinkedIn network, every Zoom call that I have, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna turn mine off for a second. Could you just scan my my profile picture, hold it up there, and it works, and it immediately scripts a deal that sends me a LinkedIn invite. And in 2020, I grew by 2,500 connections just from the Zoom call. No effort other than just my Zoom call meetings that I had.
That's hilarious.
and had them scan it. So you could create them for anything really, and I use them all the time. I put them on tags like this. I put them everywhere, because people automatically already know that, hey, there's something to scan. And then it kicks you data, it kicks you information. You can share things immediately from that. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. That's super cool. Let's talk about live streaming, because we talked a little bit about Zoom, talked a little bit about social media. Of course, we're only really dipping into things, but these are all the things that everybody's trying to figure out. First and foremost, man, I think the giant mistake that churches make is that thinking that if you just film the experience you're having in the room, it will be at least a passable experience for people at home online. But that's not the same. I mean, it's like live streaming a church service is not even the same thing as watching a church service on television. It's like not even close. Why isn't it close? Why isn't it the same? Why even great live streams, even churches of 5,000 people that have great gear, their live stream still, it's not even good TV. It's not even public access TV. The experience of watching it from the viewer's perspective is just so disappointing. Why?
Yeah, let's be honest. The disciplines for engaging with TV have only gone lower in 2020.
Yeah.
Or engaging, with live stream church spaces.
Yeah.
There's a group called Subsplash out of Seattle that I'm really good friends with. I've been in a relationship with them for 10 years, even when I was with the Free Methodist Church, and they're really the first people that have figured out quite how to do that whole engagement piece. So they have on their platform, they'll put your stream into Apple TVs. Any smart TV will put their stream into there, do that whole thing. And the people that are really engaging with it, again, it's watch parties. You're going to sit with your family, you engage with this thing. And to me, online church should actually be an entire campus. It shouldn't be just like, let's just put a camera out there and see if people watch a pastor moving around a 10-foot box space to do that. It should actually be a produced piece where there's a bit of teaching, there's a bit of disciplines like Lectio Divinas and any of the like spiritual disciplines that you want to do, so that you can sit around a group and gather around and do it in that way. It's not, you can't translate what happens in a physical space
in the room,
through a tiny over-the-top pipeline and then down into that space and expect the same kind of engagement.
So for so many churches, they're not going to be able to do anything deluxe or extravagant with live.
So break it up.
So which I mean, should they stop? Should they not stream music? Should they only stream the teaching? Should they what are kind of your dummies version?
So talk to me about the components of a church service. There's music, somewhere like that, right? So you can create a free playlist for every Sunday if you want.
Sure, on Spotify,
and say this is so give people the scripts on what's going to happen. This is the playlist. Listen to these 3 songs, then watch this video.
Sure.
Teaching piece of it, and if it's 23 minutes for a sermon, then the discussion pieces that happen afterwards, because the setting is entirely more intimate that. So when I do things with my kiddos, it's reading a bit of the scripture, and we get through 2 verses in like an hour, because they get tripped up on what does this word mean, how does this connect, why does this and that. So the really rich experiences happen after all that. But don't stream music. Everybody does it poorly. Nobody has been able to do, unless you have, massive production budget, then you won't be able to stream that music well. Use playlists, right?
The one thing that does surprise me, because you're right, like I mean, unless you're at a 20,000 person mega church with a $500,000 worth of streaming gear, that music's gonna sound a little bumpy online. The one caveat is I hear back not only from our own people at Westwinds, but from people by and large, that it's quite comforting to see your worship leader on stage, to see your guitar player. It's quite comforting to see your auditorium. And what I notice that a lot of our people do is they'll put the live stream on their laptop or on their TV or on their phone. Usually it's laptop or phone, and then they just kind of clean the kitchen or they vacuum the floor. Or they kind of it's like background noise. The problem is that it's usually the noise that's the problem as opposed to the
There's one thing that I would say about that, and this comes back to visibility and doing that. If you're going to do it that way, and if people are going to engage in that way, then publish your video on YouTube. It's the number 2 search engine in the world. It has the best and most rich response back
as opposed to Facebook.
As opposed to Facebook. Oh, do both.
Sure.
Don't cut out one of them. Just do it. Take the 30 seconds extra to put it on YouTube and tag everything really well and give it the YouTube Studio creator experience so that people understand how this works. Because YouTube is owned by Google, and Google wants their own products to be used. Yeah. They will rank you up higher on the amount of engagements that you have or on the amount of views that you have on YouTube on that. So don't stray people away from it, but do it in addition to and make sure that video is really just cleaned up and hopping in that space.
All right, now you got a bunch of notes about stuff that you want to talk about. What do you want to do?
Well, I just depends on. Do we want to go through the Netflix report has published that over-the-top streaming has increased from 3.8 hours a day in 2016 to 9.5 hours a day
per
American household.
Oh my gosh!
So
10 hours a day we're streaming content.
This is on top of like your Zoom working and doing all that. So the black box has completely oversaturated the households. There's a reason why even Comcast can't keep up with e-learning and Zoom work from home and all of that. Yeah. So when you're thinking about like, hey, let's create this video assets and these kind of things, just remember that people are already streaming all these other spaces. So and to me, I would say make sure that your content is shorter and more frequent and regular so that people are able to do it in those between sessions because there's already so much long form being streamed.
Yeah, right. So they're thinking about a confetti approach of sprinkling it throughout the day or the week or whatever,
the breadcrumb deal, right? So if you have a 23-minute sermon that you want to do,
break it up into 4 or 5 parts. And
break it up into 4 or 5 parts. Segment subscribers.
Yeah, right? That's our current strategy at Westwinds. We keep making changes to how we do our daily stuff, but right now I think I'm on the internet between Westwinds and the chapter house. I think I'm on there 7 times a day for 3 minutes or less.
Yeah. One thing that I appreciate about Westwinds so much is that you work in series, right? Mm-hmm. So people know that this is a series. There's going to be more to come on this piece, and they're not standalone. Yeah, I've never met anyone that said, "Dang, I really wish that I didn't strategically plan." I've never met anyone who said, "Damn, if I would have just not planned this series out or planned out what I was going to say, then."
Well, I started teaching in series. A series made no sense to me when I first started preaching. Because I was bored with the topic, but I was after a year or two, I was so depressed because I'm a research junkie and I'm a preparation junkie, and then you'd spend 50, 60 hours working on a sermon, get up on Sunday, deliver it. You can only use 30 minutes of all that you learned, and then all this other work is just wasted. And so then you got to start all over again the next Monday, and you're like, this is what a waste of my time. And so by thinking in series, then you. That 50 hours of research really doesn't just benefit one sermon; it benefits 2 months worth of sermons, and then you can prepare long enough in advance that your graphic designer, your media designer, your worship designer, whoever, those people know not only what you're going to say, but they kind of know the pool from which you're drawing. Yeah. So I let them into the research process early. I let them into the wordsmithing process early, so we get themes and stuff together. So they're dreaming about it. Their dreaming oftentimes will help me think through what I'm going to say. And so then the whole experience is much more holistic. And then, at Westwinds, we've always done lots of artifacts, and we're publishing books, or we're doing, decks of cards, board games, social media campaigns, justice campaigns, charitable campaigns. I mean, we're always trying to +1 everything that we do. And that, I mean, so that of course translates to social media. Of course that translates to traditional media. I mean, just thinking through those things from a 30,000 foot level and asking, what's God saying to the church, and how does God want us to say it? And for how long would God like us to address it? And that's those have been big issues.
And I would say to folks that feel overwhelmed with it, don't start off small, right? 10 to 15 second, 30-second videos max, and do it pretty regularly. Try to make a goal of doing one a week, and then the next month do it 2 a week, and then the next month do it 3 a week. And then
you're talking about when they're thinking through in series and want to create supplemental
series, right?
content or additional content. Well, what I do is I plan the series out, and then I go, here's my big blocks. Like, for example, I'm teaching through the Book of Numbers right now. So here's the 8 stories I'm going to talk about on Sundays for the Book of Numbers. And then I go, oh, great. And then I'm going to do one video teaching a day, Monday through Friday, about the chapters around that story that I'm going to tell. And then I film all those videos in one day. So Friday morning, in an hour, I'll film, or honestly, in like 30 minutes, I'll film a week's worth of content of supplemental teaching to the series that I'm in, because I already have the background knowledge. And then I just get up there and I go, you have one thing to say. If you're gonna make a video, it's not a 3-point sermon. It's just a thing. You're saying one thing. Sometimes that one thing takes 60 seconds. Sometimes that one thing takes 4 minutes. Sometimes that one thing takes 10 minutes. But that's the way you save yourself on the preparation. Don't try and film a video every day. You film them all at once, and then schedule the posts for the next week out, and it takes tons of the pressure off.
So what I would say is, yes, that's knock it all at once. But the folks that there's so many folks out there that just don't. They're not going to think at that level, at that high. So if you can just set aside 30 minutes a day that you're going to do your 10-second to 15-second or 30-second
video
word of the day, video of the day, whatever you use, then don't use what you have, right? Use the stuff at your disposal. Yeah. I always tell people, like, in the battle of cameras, right? And there was a book published a long time ago called "What's the Best Camera?" And they went through like Nikon and Canon and Olympus and Sony, and they were comparing all the glass and all this stuff. And the author at the end of it goes, but it all doesn't matter, because you don't have these cameras with you all the time. The camera you have with you all the time is right here. Yeah. And now you have 4K, right? And I'll take it up a notch, and I carry inside of my wallet. This is hilarious. And
what is happening right now?
I carry inside of my wallet
tripod
a pocket tripod that just pops in there, and you set your deal, and then you take pictures or cameras or whatever. And like Kaylin and I will take pictures all the time with the thing like 300 feet away or whatever, and then nobody has to do anything for you. You just have it there or whatever.
Yeah, if you can do it all off your phone.
If you have everything accessible at all times, which is really just your phone and a goofy little prop to do that, then you have access to being able to broadcast on that immediately. And it makes a big difference when you're putting just words on a scrolling screen, or you're doing video. And then obviously, like, the statistic is 35% more engagement on a video if there's subtitles.
Really?
If there's subtitles, there's 35% more engagement. And think about it for 1 second.
Including the auto-generated captions and...
those usually are not so great, but those are better. Like, think about your own experience. If you're scrolling through the thing, I usually have my phone always on mute. Like, that's just the reality. It's always on mute. Yeah. And the audio is always down. For some reason, it's always, because I don't like scrolling through the thing and then blasting on me, right? And in fact, Instagram makes you tap it, and Facebook makes you tap it if you want the audio come up on it or whatever. But think about your own experience when you're swiping through. Do you catch yourself stopping when there's subtitles or big text on the video? Think about your own experience.
What's the best way to get the subtitles on?
So I would use again. You're using short videos.
Captions, right?
Captions. Captions. I would use like auto capture generator, or get on like Video Use and those. There's so many free video editors. If you just Google video creators or whatever that generate that stuff. It makes a massive difference. And just think about it on your own. How many times you stop because something's happening, And if it's caught you enough attention, then you'll tap it to keep the audio going or not. Yeah. But the I call it toilet consumption time, right? Like you're sitting on the can and you're scrolling, and then you stop, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, what is this? Like, Nas Daily did fantastic and made a $1 million business. It's just a video editor guy. It's just the NAS Daily is his thing. He set out to do 1,000 days of a minute-long video every day on whatever docu-series that he had or whatever. And he made a several $1 million business out of just 1 minute a day, every single day, and his little docu-series on that. And he was really the guy who coined the whole captions or like text on the screen. And part of it is because he has a Arabic accent, and he's like, it's hard for people to understand me, so the titles help. So when you think about the cultural nuances of all that.
Let's talk scripture for a second, because there's so much, there's just, it can be so bewildering to try and navigate this new world. And so many of us are asking, like, what's the point? Like, well, this is ridiculous. I mean, there's a sort of a Pollyanna, Little House on the Prairie yearning to go back to days when we just got to be pastors, and we didn't have to be media moguls, we didn't have to be televangelists, because we don't. Those are typically people we don't like. I mean, pastors look at those guys and go, "That's fake. That's plastic. It's manipulative. It's coercive. And pastors.
I get that.
Yeah, and pastors are picking up the pieces of the great disappointments of." To use a now safe example of, the Jim and Tammy Faye Bakers who broke everybody's hearts, 50 years ago on TV. So let's talk scripture. And I think immediately the Apostle Paul, I've become all things to all men that I might by some means save some. We talk about the Great Commission, like go into all the world and preach the gospel. And guess what? All the world is in your hand on your iPhone.
All the time, right?
Yeah, all the time. You have the biggest opportunity, the biggest platform. Peter could gather 3,000 on the day of Pentecost. You can gather 3,000 in the next 5 minutes if you have the patience to go through and tag a few people on a Facebook video.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, that's the other... So LinkedIn does this a lot, or at least I see people that are really successful on LinkedIn do this a lot. They will call out a person on a post and say, like, if it was me, right, I'd put my 30-second video up or whatever in my content, and I say, at David McDonald, what are your thoughts on this? Oh, and now you look like a dick if you don't engage with it and share with it. And then all
you mean nice call out? I thought you meant like,
no. You call out. I'm so sick of your garbage. Hey, Dave, what do you think about this? And it's like, oh, I better engage with this. I better do the deal. And then Dave's friends start saying, hey, like you didn't ask me. This is what I think of this or whatever. This whole process of exclusivity actually creates a lot of inclusivity in the mechanics behind all of it. So I would do it on Facebook. I'd do it on Instagram.
So people will do that to me from time to time, and it drives me nuts because
it drives you nuts
because I go like, I don't want, like, especially if it's a guy like some of the guys that I did my doctoral work with. I haven't talked to them in 15 years, and then you see them come out of nowhere in your feed, and it's like you go, oh, here's somebody who now has decided social media is important, and so he's tagging me in everything. Because he thinks I've got a network that he can have or something. I don't have much of a network, but more I feel irritated that you're whoring me out for your.
But that's what happens. But we're digressing from the scripture part, and in the scripture piece, I think what's hilarious is that if the Apostle Paul would have been alive today and doing his deal, he'd have been on TikTok. He'd have been on. Think about it.
I was prepared for you to say social media. I was not prepared for specifically the Apostle Paul's tent making TikTok.
Oh yeah, he would have been dancing. He would have been showing you the deal. He would have been like calling out the guys,
beating heretics.
Yeah, you think about it. In the time,
first his TikTok is stoning Stephen.
Yeah.
And then his TikTok is shaming John Mark for being a sissy.
Or and being like thrown in jail and like blasting open the gates of jail when he evangelizes the gatekeeper because but think about it, like the level of influence that he had and then the tools at his disposal were so innovative, right? To write letters. He was on Twitter. He invented Twitter. Right? Like you think about like the context of like I can't get to you, so I'm gonna try to communicate in a mechanic that's gonna talk to masses. Yeah. That's gonna be read out loud. Like whatever amount of people that he sent
Right.
it to, it was really broadcasted times what now to thousands of years.
Well, it's that exact idea that I think, rather than thinking about media, television, whatever, I like to think about non-local connectedness.
All right.
Feeling connected when we're not connected, because that's how it is in prayer. Like in prayer, like Jesus is not sitting right beside me. I know the Holy Spirit is in me. I know that the presence of God is around me. But the truth is, I can't look and see Jesus next to me. I can see Jesus in you, but that's metaphysical and figurative. It's not literal, right?
Yeah.
So I go, but I feel connected to Jesus when I pray. I feel connected to the Father when I pray. I feel connected to you when I pray for you, even if you're in Mexico or if you're in Russia. Or
So
if
how
I'm
do you
in
re-emulate?
Canada.
How do you emulate that into media so that people feel connected to Jesus when they're consuming?
Well,
your media.
that's my point. Is that I go. I think we get so caught up in thinking about media, thinking about social. I go, let's think about connection. And that's what the Apostle Paul was doing. I'm in jail, so I can't be physically with you, but my spirit is with you. And to demonstrate the truth that my spirit is with you, here's a letter. I go, okay, that's a great way for me as a pastor to think about my people. I go, you can't physically be with me. I can't do a Bible study for you. I can't have you at church because you're still, concerned about COVID. So my spirit is with you. And this video, this blog post, this Instagram post, this is the evidence that I'm with you in spirit. But I think the mistake that people make is we think that the social media post is the connection. It's not. It's the manifestation of the connection that already exists.
So my response would be, David, what do you do when you miss them? When you miss your wife? Hey, have you gone on a trip before? What do you do when you miss your kiddos?
Sure, you text them, call them.
Pull out your phone and you look at something. You look at pictures, right?
Pictures, yeah.
Yeah. So people engage the memory, the mind's eye, and the memory, and all the sensory pieces that come with that are so much more like action provoking and like even like comforting almost in a sense. So like if you look at my Bible, it's sitting here. There's a bunch of like my story. Like I love GoPro cameras.
Sure,
and I've used GoPro cameras for years. I got stickers all over. I love that breakfast place because I've had so many like meetings and Bible studies and prayer times at that place. I love that brewery because I just love Seattle whatsoever, and I love being down in that space. Well, I remember a trip with you because of that. I got all these little goofy. I don't remember when you did these, but I got Westwind stuff. I got all this junk, right? So you think about how to give people like action-provoking pieces. You give them artifacts, and you guys do it great. You guys do stickers. You do all these pieces.
I wonder if we're not smart to think about live stream in whatever form we're able to do it as a church bulletin. Like oftentimes, all my Bibles have bulletins from every church I've ever visited, every church I've ever preached, every church I've ever worked. And you open up your Bible, and in my case, my Bible's like a litter bomb.
Falling out of stuff.
Yeah, it's just confettied everywhere. And I go, but I wonder if that's not our social media feed. And Facebook does a great job of saying, remember this day 5 years ago. When
the memory pieces, right?
Yeah, when you leave a good social media footprint, when you're tracking and tagging things, you get that same burst of nostalgia, or you get that same sense of connection, like you would if you're scrolling through your photo app in a hotel room halfway around the world away from your family. So I wonder if there's hope for people who can't do high quality live stream to just say, hey, just doing it matters. Let's try and make it better, but don't despair because it's crappy.
Yeah,
your bulletin's crappy too, but we still have good memories when we see the bulletin from Mother's Day in 1976 at Burnaby Baptist Fellowship or whatever.
No, I think you're right on. I think those commemorative pieces. I mean, there's so much research on how much that brings it back to a certain place, or reminders of how that works, or working through that, and certainly live stream pieces. Like if my suggestion would be if you had to, if it's a calibration process. So every time you do it, how do you improve it 1%?
Sure.
Whatever your 1% means, this is gonna make the audio 1% better. Can make the content 1% better. Can I fix my lighting 1% better?
Right.
Can my stability be better?
Improvement. Right?
Just 1%. Don't take chunks. Don't try to improve 100% every single time. It's gonna be too devastating and confusing, and just take it 1% and remember that stuff lives on the internet forever. So
including bad stuff. We're all one struggling Sunday away from Jesus as a friend of mine.
Yeah, exactly.
The renewed, that great, the white people dancing and breakdancing and rapping video. The renewed mind is the key, which I'm convinced that I was in the audience the day that was first filmed. And I'm convinced that that's from Christian Faith Center in Seattle. Oh my gosh, yeah. All right, what any other scriptures that come to your mind?
The true over the top. That's the term. Over the top is the live stream term nowadays. The over the top guy. I was while you were setting all this up, I was reading about Jesus walking and with his disciples, and at some point a centurion shows up to him and runs into Jesus, basically stops him halfway through his trip, probably to Capernaum or something that he's trying to get to, and he says, Jesus, if you want, you could at a distance heal my guy, right? So
you don't need to show up.
You don't even need to show up. You can just broadcast your message, and it'll happen if you want, right? So like Jesus is like a little bit taken back, and he's like, dang. Maybe Jesus said dang, but he's like, he's like, this guy's showing more faith than a bunch. Okay, well, go, and when you arrive, your guy's gonna be good. And
so Jesus didn't even have to show up.
He didn't even have to show up. His message was transcending. It was over the top. It just reached the deal. And when we think about how we do that, we should really think through navigating how do we prescribe healthy conversations to people. How do we give them the power of prayer over the air? How do we give them networks of that? I'd create a whole cell network around healing prayers. Just a lot of situations. We were just talking about how sick everybody is right now. I guarantee you know somebody who's physically ill. Guarantee you.
Sure.
Somebody that you know that is physically ill.
And that's always been true, but that's especially true in the global pandemic. Yeah.
Especially true in a global pandemic. So think about a online series where you are specifically praying and reading scriptures of physical healing for people, and treat it almost as like your prescription, right? If you had strep throat and you need to take amoxicillin and you're going to do it twice a day for 10 days, then start developing series around.
Then go pray 20 healing scriptures.
This is the deal.
Every day.
Take it like a spoonful of
spoonful of scripture,
and then start to create those habits, right? Start breaking those pieces up into habits that would, but with video consumptions, right? And they don't have to take a long time.
Those are habits that'll translate online. I think about the Apostle Paul and the prayer cloth that he instructs, and my own dad, when Dad was sick with cancer, his friends sent him a prayer cloth that they'd all lay hands on. Dad kept that prayer cloth, and they go, there's no reason that a prayer cloth has to be physical.
But it's the faith.
A prayer cloth can be an Instagram post. A prayer cloth can be a direct message. I mean,
everything is save post now, right?
Yeah,
save post.
Yeah, but I think of all the things that we talked about, that's the line that sticks out to me, is the centurion coming to say, if you want. And I think that's the key question for the church. If you want. Do you want? Do you want to continue providing hope and healing? Do you want to engage your people online? Because there's ways to do it better, but at the root is, do you want to be a missionary to a digital culture? Do you want to be someone who's pastoring the planet? Do you want to keep working in an area outside of your wheelhouse, outside of your expertise, outside of your comfort zone? Do you want to heal? And if the answer is yes, then all you got to do is say the word. And Jesus, of course, had some expertise that we don't have. He had some practice in prayer that we don't have. But you know what? He earned that practice. He started praying. He started studying the scriptures. He started devoting himself to the will of his Father.
Fasting and developing.
And we can do that too. We can start. We can devote ourselves so that in a year, we've got 1,000 hours of practice. So when someone comes up to us the next time and says, do you want to provide hope and healing online, we can say, yep, absolutely. Jump on the opportunity and watch the miracle occur. So, well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks, Jay, for being here. Love you, man. And we'll keep rolling out good stuff because we want to.